Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Eric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
I'm Lexi and I love agriculture.
My name's Carter and I love eating.
My name's Chase and I love lifting weights.
My name's Summer and I love spending my parents' money.
I'm Dane and I love baseball.
Our show is about our blended, blessed, and always a mess life. And our hope is if you find yourself in the same situation we are in, that by sharing our story, all the fun and all the mess, the challenges we are experiencing, it will give you some inspirations, laughs, and community, knowing you are not alone in this mess.
We appreciate you spending time with us. Let's dive in.
Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where this week we have another very powerful guest joining us. Angie, she's on a roll in continuing to meet strong women that are taking their pain and turning it into purpose, which, as we've talked about on this podcast before, it can be healing, but it can also, I don't know if that's the right word, but it gives you purpose, as we've mentioned. So recently, Angie crossed paths with Jen on TikTok, and social media platforms can connect us in so many ways, and just felt like this was a story that needed to be told for parents everywhere. So it could lead to a conversation with your kids. It could be very important. Angie, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I think it's just another example of how you just think, well, this wouldn't happen to my family. I mean, we've been in that situation with losing Hallie. You never think you're going to lose a child. And when I came across Jen's TikTok, I mean, it was just immediately like, oh my gosh, we've got to share this story. I mean, we have teenagers, we're raising teenagers, and we don't know what it's like to grow up in a social media world. And I know that every one of our kids have experienced some level of bad experience in social media. And so this is just a whole nother aspect of that we all need to hear this message, and we need to sit down and have a conversation with our kids. And just full transparency, Jen and I chatted briefly. I think it's odd. We actually have a lot in common, I think, of just our career path and who we are as a mom. But Eric and I, it's the first time we're going to hear the story, full story about Jordan. With that, first and foremost, Jen, just thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, your fight with us and our podcast listeners. So welcome, and maybe just share a little bit about who you are, and then let's dive into Jordan's story.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me today on your podcast and allowing me to share about Jordan. I am from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I've lived here just about my entire life, leaving only for short periods of time, but ended up back here. I worked for the federal government for 17 and a half years before I retired. I have 2 younger girls that I am raising, and they consume a lot of my life. I really, I'm committed to the gym. That has been like my go-to throughout all of this. Showing up with a group of friends to work out every morning. And if it's nice out here in Michigan, which is only a few months of the year, I like to spend it near the lake, walking, taking in the beach, the sun, and everything that this community has to offer.
Yeah, I can relate to every one of those. I've had 18 years in government and technology, which I think you were in technology as well. And kids are my world, and get me outside and move my body. I think I've said that multiple times on the podcast. If you are going through hard times, and Jen, I'm sure you can attest to this, moving your body helps eliminate some of that depression aspect. I mean, when I'm struggling, yesterday I don't know what was wrong with me. I was super anxious the whole day, but not for any particular reason. And then I just end up doing like an hour-long workout, and it's just like it brings that down. So that's another area I think you and I are the same. It's like, go work out. It's a release of all the emotions. So do you want to share what happened to Jordan? And tell us about Jordan first and foremost. Who was he? What type of kiddo was he? That type of thing. What did he love to do?
Jordan was an amazing kid. He was 17 years old and getting ready to graduate from high school. He was preparing himself for college to pursue a degree in sports medicine and physical therapy. He really was this smiling, happy kid. His peers shared that he was the kid, if they were walking down the hall in the morning, they looked to him to see if he was smiling, and that made their day. He was super involved with sports, playing football, basketball. He had an injury one year, which kind of set him back a little bit, but he did all of his own work to rehab himself and get back to playing. He worked at McDonald's. He loved working at McDonald's, and he was the one always goofing off in the kitchen, but ready to lend a hand to someone else. He was super helpful to me with my younger kids, always asking, have you picked them up from daycare? Can I come and get them? What do you need? Do you need me to come so you can take a shower or get a break or something? He loved music. Music was his thing. He wore his AirPods all the time. He introduced me to a lot of music. And that's something that we really bonded over, was music in the car or music in the kitchen, just dancing around and goofing off. I mean, I couldn't ask for more in a kid than what I had with Jordan.
Tell us then what happened in losing Jordan.
Jordan received a direct message on Instagram in one evening around 10 o'clock at night. And it looked like a female, a teenage female, his age, that just said, "Hey." And they started chatting back and forth with this female saying, "We have a mutual friend in common. What do you like to do? Where are you from?" Just going back and forth, having some conversation. After a little while, this female asked for Jordan to send a picture of himself, an explicit picture of himself. And they said, we'll send one too, you send one. Jordan did eventually send an explicit photo of himself to this person. The moment that he sent that photo, he found out that this person who he thought was a female was not a female at all. It was a male in another country. They immediately demanded $1,000 from him and said, "If you give us this money, we won't share it with anybody." But Jordan's a high school kid. He doesn't have $1,000. He did have some money, but he didn't have $1,000. So he negotiated with them to get the amount down and finally ended up sending $300 to them. So they actually got some money from him. It wasn't enough. They kept pressuring him, telling him that they would send his images to me, to his friends. They would make it go viral. They were building collages on Instagram, making it look like they were already sending it out to his friends' moms. So Jordan may have believed that these images had already been leaked out to people in this community. They kept telling him that what a loser he was and just torturing him. And he asked them to stop. He begged them to stop and said, why are you doing this to me? And at one point he said, "I feel like I want to take my own life right now." And they encouraged him to do that and said, "We're going to watch you die a miserable death." Ugh. And when Jordan was really worn down, he said, "I'm killing myself right now because of you." And they told him, "Good, do that fast or we'll make you do it." And he did. In 6 hours, in a less than a 6-hour time frame, these people found my son on social media, pressured him, and got him to take his own life.
This all happened within 6 hours?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm already with teenagers just sick to my stomach hearing how this could happen and how you just put yourself in the position of a 17-year-old boy who doesn't know that there's forgiveness in your parents, right? We're here to help you and protect you from things like this when you make a mistake. And I'm sure that, I don't want to guess, but my assumption is you wish you had an opportunity to say, "This is going to be okay. Like we will get through this."
Well, how would you, when it happened so fast, like there's nothing you could have even done. If it was in my situation with losing Hallie, there was this whole long, 3 or 4 year relationship where I could see her, struggle and kind of change in how she saw herself and her self-confidence and all of that stuff, to where it's like, hey, here's some red flags to watch out for. But in a scenario like this, where it's in within a 6-hour time frame. There's no red flags, to be able to anyone to intervene.
And that's something that people question or ask about a lot is, what were the signs? I didn't have any signs because it happened so quickly. And Jordan was not staying at my house that night. So I said goodbye to him earlier in the evening, and that was the last I spoke to him. It is happening in shorter time frames than even what it happened in the 6 hours that it happened to Jordan.
Wow. Well, social media plays such a impact in how our kids react to things. And even just a very, very small example, things I see with our kids is like if someone takes a picture of them and it's not a great picture, it's like a bad angle or a bad picture of them, just in the simplest thing, they stress about that, or someone posting a bad picture of them. And this is just like a bad picture of angle of their face or whatever. I've got 3 chins if my face is angled the wrong way. So I can't imagine, right, when kids get into a situation like that, how they are bullied and how they feel about that. And there's also the whole catfishing, right? Isn't that what they call it? Where, they're acting like somebody else. I know that happens on a regular basis. But then it's like it's like fun and games. This is a whole nother level to what our kids could interact with on social media that I think parents don't even realize. What happened after that? Like, how did you find out that this had all happened in 6 hours?
The people who contacted Jordan on Instagram reached out to Jordan's girlfriend and started asking her for money and sending her the images of him.
After he died.
Yeah. When she finally saw those messages, she had already found out that Jordan was gone, and she let them know he's gone. Like, there's nothing to give to you. He's already gone. She came to me and said, do you have his phone? I think he was talking to someone. I need to see his phone. And at that point, the state police had his phone. So it was gone and out of my hands. I asked her to share what she had with me. She really just wanted his phone. So I contacted the detective working on the case, and he reached out to her, spoke with her, got the images, and the conversation came back and said, hey, I think that this is sextortion. And the FBI put out a press release about sextortion and how big of a crime it was beginning to be the day before it happened to Jordan.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
This detective went straight to Instagram to get a transcript of the conversation because Jordan had deleted everything from his phone.
Oh.
So there was nothing that they could see if they logged into his Instagram account. So they did a request for these records under emergency procedures because at this point, these people are reaching out to his girlfriend and there could be another child at risk, and it was declined.
Really?
So they redid all of the paperwork, resubmitted it, and about 48 hours later, they had the whole transcript and law enforcement was able to come and say, yes, that's exactly what happened. It was financial sextortion.
Were they able then to track these people in another country? How does that work in something that's international like that?
So for about a year, little under a year, the FBI took this case. They found the 3 individuals in Nigeria that were contacting Jordan. They went over and arrested them, got 2 of them extradited here to the United States, charged them with multiple charges. The 2 people that are here, they're brothers. They submitted guilty pleas about a year ago, and they were just sentenced to federal prison in September of 2024.
Was this the only case or charges for them was Jordan, or were there more? I mean, could they find more? I can't imagine that they just targeted one individual.
They had targeted over 100 people in like a 2-year time frame. I don't know the names of any of the individuals. Jordan was the only one specifically named in the indictment and such, but they did it to over 100 people.
How much prison time were they given?
They were each given 17 and a half years.
Wow.
That is
There's
scary.
a third person still in Nigeria that appealed their extradition. So it's a matter of waiting for a higher court to review that. And then this whole process starts over again.
And we know how difficult trial is. We've done that in our own scenario. It's obviously not fun to go through. What was your experience like going through trial? And I guess at a federal level, where ours was more a state local level. For yours to be at a federal level, I imagine was time consuming.
I went to court, I think 5 different times. The first time I sat in court with those 2 brothers was something I never wish to repeat, to look at the 2 people who did this to my son, and they were the last people to see him and talk to him and torture him. Then going through, their guilty pleas and the sentencing, just extremely emotional, being there the days leading up to it, listening to them speak at the sentencing and give their explanation and how sorry they were. Even though I'd like to believe they were genuine, there's nothing that they could say that would soften my heart as a mother. And Jordan's case has been so public that besides going through all of the court proceedings, there's a lot of media involved. So every time there's a court proceeding, there's media asking to speak to you. So you're just immersed in that for a week or 2 weeks, trying to juggle and manage your emotions at the same time.
Yeah, I feel all of that. It's so hard. It's like, it's such a wrestling with emotions leading up to it. Sometimes I feel like is worse than sometimes even being in the room, because there's so much stress and anxiety. And there's this pressure as a mom, like you're mama bear, like your job, your role is to always protect your kids. And that's just how we're wired. And then to lose a child as a mom, it's such an unraveling is how I would describe it, because there's always this layer. And I mean, I'm making assumptions here, but like for me personally, there's always this layer of guilt in some aspects of like, my job is to protect my kids. And then you get in a situation where you could not have protected them. And then someone else is responsible for your child's death. So there's another layer of complexity. And then you go into this whole trial aspect of it. And I totally resonate. I will never forget being in the courtroom and looking at the person that shot my daughter that's responsible. And I'm with you too. Like at some aspects, you hope that they're remorseful, but it's also very hard to feel that they really are. And then I'm sure you did a victim's impact statement as well. And just like, there's no words to describe that impact. So maybe share a little bit about even that experience, because that's something that's so traumatic to go through.
For the 4 days leading up to the sentencing, I literally paced my house 20,000 steps every single day. And I knew I had to write this statement, but I kept sitting down and thinking, how can I sum up my son and what this did to me in 5 minutes? I can't do this. And it was awful. I mean, the lack of sleep I got, just the anxiety going to it. I finally had to wait for my best friend to get here and sit down and us make an outline and her help me get the words together. And reading it in front of the court is a whole other thing, to stand up there and say those things and know like that's your one chance to say your piece and hope that it has an effect on the consequences that are handed down to these people.
Yeah. Because you want people to know that they mattered. Jordan's life mattered. Hallie's life mattered. And I mean, you said it perfectly. Like, how are you ever going to put words to that so that you want to walk out of there and you want the entire room to know that your child mattered, his life mattered. And I also shared this too when we talked about the trial on the podcast. It's like you walk into that room feeling one way and you walk out of the room feeling the exact same way, because there's nothing that will bring your child back. Nothing. But this pain and this injustice is like the fuel to fight like hell. And I think the world needs mama bears like us that take that injustice and say, this is wrong. And I'm going to help as many people as I can and share this message to hopefully prevent it from happening again.
Jen, let me ask you, I know what the pain and the grief is like for my own wife on a regular basis. What has it been like for you, and has it taught you anything or anything about yourself?
Let me jump in here too real quick. Like for this sort of question, someone asked me the other day, there's a Jen before you lost Jordan. There's an Angie before I lost Allie. And then there's Jen after and Angie after. And someone asked me, what do you appreciate about the new Angie? And I'm like, oh, I never really thought about that, because I crave the old me, who I was before I lost my child, full of joy and not thinking that anything like this could happen to my family. But it did make me think there are aspects of who I am now that I never would have turned into. There's some things I appreciate, right? So I wanted to preface his question a little bit of who you are now. What are some aspects of you, who you've become because of this?
Going through grief, no matter what type of loss it is, it's awful. Losing a child is a pain I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I probably spent at least 12 months in just shock, trying to function and figure out, who am I now?
Yeah.
And inadvertently, I had lost my identity. Going through this, it has really opened my eyes to people and their kindness and compassion, that they are willing to listen to you and be there, and just their loyalty in a situation like this. It has humbled me to realize loss can happen at any level to anybody. You are not untouchable. My younger children, I get to spend more time with them than I did with Jordan when he was younger, because I was so focused on work. I can't take time off of work to bring you here. I can't take time off of work to attend this. I just worked. And with my other kids, I'm able to take a step back and enjoy those moments and appreciate the small things, which are really big things. It's okay if it's 90 degrees outside when I pick them up from school and we don't have swimsuits to go to the beach. We'll just go in whatever it is and get sand everywhere, because we're going to live in that moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely. It changes what matters in an instant. You know exactly what matters in life. And that is a gift. I mean, I've shared this before on our podcast too. I had, shortly after I lost Hallie, went to this grief therapist, healing person. And he had said, if you allow it, grief can be a gift. And I'm like, screw you, dude. This is not a gift. But as time passed, I understand what he means. And what he meant was it elevates you to see things at a different level than most people don't see. And it is that perspective and what matters. And it's the little things and how you spend your time. And I think for you, I'm sure you were spending a lot of time also focusing on honoring Jordan and carrying this message forward. So maybe share about your fight forward and what that looks like as far as raising awareness and what has transpired since this happened.
So because of the investigation going on with Jordan's case, I had to be quiet for about a year and not even talk about anything and fly under the radar. We did have the opportunity when Jordan initially passed that the sheriff's department put out a press release explaining what happened to Jordan, because this entire community was, questioning what happened. So we got to clarify, and that was the one time As soon as I was able to speak about Jordan, I knew I needed to go to social media and share that. I knew my greatest audience that I could reach, parents and kids the right age, was going to be TikTok. Jordan coincidentally set up my TikTok account, or I would not even have one. So I went there and I shared the message, and the feedback I got was 50% parents didn't know about it and 50% it had already happened, but nobody was talking about it. And, media was interested. I don't know that I've ever turned down an opportunity to share Jordan's story, because each person that I talk to, it spreads that message further and further along. And I'm still amazed that people don't know that this is going on, or they assume that it won't happen to their child. So sharing Jordan's story has been a huge part of who I've become and what I think is important. What happened to him has also caused a change in laws in the state of Michigan, making financial sextortion a crime. Today, actually, there is a display at the Crime History Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, that is about what happened to Jordan.
What's the connection there? How'd that happen in Tennessee? Was it just like traveling sort of display?
So someone saw one of my TikTok videos that worked in the museum, and they reached out, and for a year, they worked on putting this together.
Wow.
That's powerful.
That's painful beauty. It is amazing. I did the exact same thing. I took to TikTok because I wanted girls to understand their self-worth, and it does not belong in the hands of another human, because it's a problem. Narcissism's a problem. Women's value, self-worth is a problem. And it was like, how do I reach kids, teens? And I did start out doing TikToks around relationship red flags. And it's similar. Like, people commented like, hey, my daughter's in a relationship like this, or hey, I'm in a relationship like this and I'm struggling to get out, or, they can connect with it and it's like an eye-opening experience of like, this is a problem. I 1,000% agree. This is a problem that people need to hear about, learn about, have conversations with their kids about. Like, from a parent to a parent, what would you tell parents to take action on?
I would definitely sit down and have a conversation with your child. If they have access to the internet, social media, a smartphone, I would have a conversation with your child about speaking to someone that they don't know. If anybody asks them for money, images, favors, not to share that, to go to a trusted adult, whether that's a parent or a teacher, whoever that they feel comfortable with, and share it, because this is so big that our kids aren't prepared to handle the swiftness of this crime. Also reassuring your kids that if they do get caught up in it and they share an image, it's okay. It's temporary. It will go away. Everybody's life will move on for it. And you did nothing wrong. The people who are doing this, they are predator. This is their job. There's literally a script that you can find on YouTube or TikTok that they just go through and do this. So they are masters of manipulation. And the best thing you can do is continue to have the conversation and remind them that they can come to you for help.
What happens? I'm just curious, like, even if our law enforcement is ready for this, but let's just say a kid starts interacting with someone and they realize that they have a false identity and they're asking them for something. At what point can they contact law enforcement before they're like saying, hey, I need to? Would law enforcement know how to react to that, I guess, is my question.
It's a good question.
Law enforcement is learning, just like the rest of us. Jordan's case was the first case in history to go through all of these steps and find the people and bring them here. So law enforcement is learning. They're probably overwhelmed with cases. In fact, You can always report to your local law enforcement. The FBI has a spot on their website that you can go ahead and report. You can also report to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children because they track all of those numbers and work with law enforcement to help combat this. NCMEC also has a program called Take It Down. So if you do have an image go out and this happens, they can help it get taken down.
Okay, that's good to know. Because I think that's what kids are, I mean, talk about manipulation, but that's what they're most afraid of is what their peers might see, what someone might think of them. So that's such a easy target to go after with our kids because especially at those ages, that's like catastrophic to them if they feel like somebody's going to share something about them to their friends and that people make fun of them at school. I mean, it's just like the smallest thing is such a huge deal to our kids. So I can see where they're easy targets.
It's a really effective scam because of the sensitivity involved. And in my son's case, but in also other cases that I've seen, the people are using their greatest assets against them to manipulate them and shame them so that they send the money or take their own life.
Well, this is truly one of the saddest stories, I think, because we can relate. Like we have so many listeners with kids and teenagers that are going to hear Jordan's story and go, oh my gosh, that could be our child. I mean, we have 4 teenagers right now. And you just think, oh my gosh, I can't even fathom, especially that I didn't realize the speed and how fast everything happened to Jordan and to your family. And that even like makes it just makes my senses feel even more like, oh my gosh, this is such a sad, sad situation that could happen to anyone. So I do think you being able to share and so that it can be shared with as many teenagers as possible. Like you said, like kids need to be made aware, obviously, ahead of time so that they know that, hey, we'll get through this. This is something, have the conversation, sit your kids down, have the conversation.
Well, I think also why it hits home is because I could easily see how this happens, knowing how our kids are, right? They're on social media. They're impacted by what people think of them. And I could totally see how kids would freak out about something like that and just make a quick decision because they would be mortified if something got out.
Yeah. And in Jordan's case, also, they did it at night. He was tired. It was dark. There was nobody awake, coming through to check on him. So it's like everything lined up to be the worst case scenario and have it happen. Had that occurred during the day, right, when I probably would be going up into his room, bothering him, being like, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? And I might have noticed something going on. It was that night and there was no chance to stop it.
Yeah. Gosh, so heartbreaking. So heartbreaking. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners about the story or a takeaway for them as we wrap?
Just keep talking. Every person that you share this with, that could be a life that is saved. And it's awful not having Jordan here. But if in sharing his story, it can make a meaningful change and help someone else, then it just solidifies that for every person I talk to, that's what I need to do.
We will absolutely be sharing the story and having conversations with our own kids. So thank you for your bravery and sharing. Before we wrap today, we do always share one thing that we're grateful for. I'm not sure, ladies, which one of you would like to go first today, but
I'll jump in. I think for me, top of mind of just, I am so grateful for women like you, Jen, that are full of fight, because without mamas that can take their pain and the unraveling loss of a child and face that storm head on with grit and determination and make a difference, we wouldn't have the awareness and education that we have today that could save our kids from a potential traumatic and just heartbreaking situation. So I'm grateful for you. This is not an easy battle. I mean, when something like this happens, you have two choices. You can lay down and not do anything about it, or you can get up and fight. And when you fight, it's like carrying this massive 1,000-pound weight with you that you're dragging every day to fight. Like, I don't think people realize like how hard it is to get up every day, knowing you don't have your child, but knowing also that you've got to do something with this. So I'm so grateful for women like you. Like this is changing and saving lives. So just so appreciative of that.
Thank you. And same for you, for going out there and helping others and turning your tragedy into something meaningful. So something that I'm grateful for is hands down my daughters. Like they're the reason that I have to get up every morning, and I didn't have a choice. I had to. So that goes without saying, my daughters, but also the village of people that I have around me that help pick me up when that weight is too heavy for me to carry. And they come in and just give me the support so I can get going and move along. And, you know, they do it without any conditions or expectations. Just they are there surrounding me, and they have not wavered in 3 years to help me keep going and support me.
Jennifer, is there any place that people can go for any more resources about how to fight forward in this regard for their kids?
The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there's a ton of information there. There are some parent groups. If you Google sextortion, you're going to find a plethora of information. If you Google Jordan's name, you are going to be overwhelmed with information that can help you. A lot of parents say, well, how do I start talking to my kid about it? There are some video pieces out there about Jordan, and I think that's a great way to start because it really personalizes it. You're seeing this actual child that you can relate to and open up that door for conversation.
Just send your kids Jen's TikTok. Honestly, like they're on TikTok. So sometimes that's how we get messages to our kids too. It's like, watch this TikTok.
What is your TikTok for people to find?
It's Jen, Jenn, Buta.
Buta.
Buta, yes.
Got it. Well, I'll just wrap by saying I'm thankful for the fact that it's officially spring. And as Jen and I were talking about before we started today, right before Angie hopped on, the seasonal depression is real. They were calling for like another foot of snow where she lives. And she was like, I can't do anymore. And so earlier this week, I was out on the trail. We have several trails that are beautiful across Missouri. And I was out and I was praying, and I was just thinking about there was a lot of still bushes and trees that have not come to life yet. And it was that reminder of winter and how things pass away. And sometimes in life we're in a valley. But there were also bushes and trees that were starting to bloom. And I was just seeing beauty in small buds that were on trees and bushes and things like that, hearing some birds start to sing that sounded like spring. And it was almost like a really great feeling of hope that I had in my heart. And so just tying that in with the fact that I can see from my own personal life and with Angie, the grief and the despair, and then also visiting with you today, Jen. But then you guys are both turning this into purpose to give hope to other people, hope for other children, hope for other teenagers. And I think that's at the end of the day, we're all trying to find hope somewhere. So grateful that spring gives us some hope for both of you ladies. So appreciate you being on our show today, Jen. And if there's ever anything else we can do to help you spread Jordan's message, we would be happy to do that.
Thank you.
With that, we hope that you guys have an absolutely wonderful week. Make sure to talk to your kids if you have teenagers especially, and God bless. Thank you for listening to Blended Blessed and Always a Mess. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at blendedblessedalwaysamess.com.
Reach out to us on any of our social channels. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week.